Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode. It is the Matchfit Football Podcast. I'm Darren, your host, here this week on the Matchfit Football Podcast. As always, remember Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at Matchfit Football for any of your footballing needs. But today's guest, he is a player for Atlético Ottowa. He's a Canadian international. It is Chris Mannella. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Darren. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for coming on. It was really good to connect with some of the staff members, at Athletico and kind of get chatting and eventually get you here on the show. I mean, I'm excited to get it going. Before we went live, you did mention you were training today. Talk to me a little bit about training today. How did that go? And what have you done since training? Have you been in any type of recovery or has it been a bit more relaxed for you?
Yeah, training, more of a normal day today. Came in, did our normal morning routine, kind of warm up in the locker rooms, head out in the field. And yeah, it was a competitive session, small sided games and some finishing. That was kind of the bulk of the training session. And then afterwards, typical day where you just kind of head home. You toss on some FIFA and some Netflix and get into the kind of recovery mode. And we're actually fortunate enough that we have 2 days off because our next match isn't for 2 weeks. So it was more of a relaxed kind of day as opposed to other days where you're kind of looking after yourself a little bit more than others because you have a training session less than 24 hours or even a match sometimes less than 24 hours away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the interesting factors, Athletico Ottawa were in the Canadian Premier League, and I think this is very unique with a lot of our listeners in Europe and in the UK. I find, how do I word it, maybe the traveling, so to speak, let's put it this way, like whenever you have an away game, say at Pacific, that's a 5.5 hour flight across a country that is enormous, by the way. We look at it and sometimes in the UK and it's like, oh, it's a 2 hour train from one end of England to the other or whatever. But in terms of how do you guys as a team and yourself personally, how do you deal with the traveling aspect of playing in the Canadian Premier League?
Yeah, it's not easy. We're a large country in terms of land mass. It's quite incredible. So, like you said, traveling from here to Victoria is not only a 5 hour flight, but then we're flying out of Ottawa, which necessarily doesn't have direct flights to everywhere. So then you're traveling, on an hour flight, and then you got a 3 hour layover, and then another 4.5 hour flight. So it's definitely a long process in the traveling circumstances. But dealing with it, you just got to do what you can. I use the Normatec boots quite often. I think they've actually come into play and helped me quite a bit, especially, just laying in the hotel, you just pop them in and that's good. I think nutrition and hydration, I know it's kind of almost like a cliche, but it comes, it's so important, especially when you're going along these huge journeys for, one match. If you're not doing the proper things off the field, such as, hydrating and eating properly, then you're going to come into a lot of problems as soon as the whistle blows for the match. And it's funny because you said in the UK, whether you're a Premier League team, Championship or whatever, you're traveling is your travel distance isn't far at all. And I former teammate of mine, Jermaine Defoe, actually was quite interesting seeing his perspective because played in the Premier League at the highest level for so long, came to TFC, and then all of a sudden we're flying to Seattle, we're flying to Vancouver, we're flying out west, for however long. And he's like, what is this? I remember that he was kind of just like, it was insane. He was not used to it. And it's funny because I had never even thought of it. Even if you're traveling from one end to the other, it's short, quick flight. So it's not easy. That's for sure.
And another thing on top of that, it's completely different wherever you play. For example, it could be like -30 somewhere, and then you could fly out, like we said, to Victoria, and then all of a sudden you're playing in 6 degrees, wind storms, and just rain, and you kind of have to adapt to that as well. And even MLS for talk's sake, you go to Salt Lake City, and all of a sudden you're playing at altitude. It's so radically different and so demanding on the body, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, just in ourselves, we were in Edmonton, which was like, I don't even remember, but it was like 0 or even below 0 Celsius. And then, you kind of come back home to Ottawa and it was like 19 degrees. And it's just like, and that's, even just within our country, I can even, in the MLS, I remember just going down to Florida and then coming back here, it's like night and day. You kind of forget. And then you're traveling out to Denver and you can't breathe in the training session. So there's so many variations that come into play, and it's not just at the end of the day, it's not just football. There's so many factors that come into play.
That's what I think is so challenging, probably about the not only just the Canadian Premier League, but the MLS as well, and the ASL and things like that. It's the amount of sheer demand on the body in terms of traveling, preparation.
Mhm.
You talked about nutrition, your hydration. There's so
Yeah,
much more goes into it, maybe behind the scenes, than what we see on the pitch. And I think that's
absolutely.
so vital. And almost feel it's a bit hidden, from the potential fan.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the most insight the fan can probably get is watching kind of the Amazon documentaries. You see the city ones, you see, I know even the Sunderland one which was awesome, but you got an inside glimpse of what the change room looks like and kind of what an everyday looks like. And it's strange because it's no different from, even the USL to the CPL to, seeing these guys in the Prem. Yes, there are levels to this and there are different kind of financial discrepancies amongst clubs, but the bulk of it is the same. So it's the fan can get an inner look of how much actually goes into a training session, how much goes into a match day, and how much preparation there is for all the things that come with being a footballer.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I think even the CFL as well, or CPL, sorry, the growth of that, and how quickly it is growing. For you as a footballer, you must take some pride in that being a player, in this league, in this continuing growth, so to speak. And I think when you look at Canada's national team and how it's performing, and you now see Canada with its own Premier League, and I see certain players being able to develop and play first team football rather than maybe get lost a little bit, maybe in some of the bigger academies. The growth, I think, of football or soccer in North America as a whole has been astonishing in the last sort of 10 years, so to speak.
Absolutely, it's quite incredible. I mean, you touched on the national team, and that's such a huge success not only for them, but it's they. I mean, I assume they understand of how much they're actually carrying on their back because they're propelling this game into everyone's eye, and if we make a World Cup, which I think is on the horizon, you're going to see it even kind of explode even more. I've had people tell me who don't even watch soccer at all, friends of mine, and all of a sudden they're asking me like, "Oh, we're going to the World Cup. What does it take?" So they're doing so much for the heavy lifting to kind of propel the game. But yeah, it's just the CPL in itself is only growing. It's year three and really only year two of what normal, because last year was just a bubble, and the growth is exponential. And you kind of also touched on the players in kind of the Canadian pool where they're thriving in European clubs, and not just European clubs. We're talking like some of the biggest European
Yeah.
clubs. So the growth of Canadian soccer has just been exponential over the last kind of 5 years. It's something great to see, and it's something great to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Even since I moved here to Canada in 2015, from where it's came from to right now, seeing that growth every year, it's mind blowing actually.
Mhm.
Coming from where I come from in the UK, and football's an everyday aspect of life, and you kind of see football becoming more and more prominent in society. Going into work when the women's national team won at the Olympics and stuff, and seeing people we're all pausing work to go stand around a TV. Just the little things like that that's just creating so much more interest in the game.
Absolutely. I mean, the women's national team just had a game here for their celebration tour out in Ottawa, and 16, 17,000 people came out on a cold, Saturday afternoon, and it's incredible to see because I said men's national team, but I mean the whole Canadian soccer program
Yeah.
is just doing bits to absolutely make this not a number one sport, because I think hockey will always be a tough competitor, especially. But they're definitely pushing for that top spot, and it's incredible. It's awesome.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Now, tell me a little bit about Atlético Ottawa and how, Ottawa, originally Ottawa Fury, and how it's developed into Atlético Ottawa, and how you're finding it there and this season, and how you're fitting in and stuff, because I don't think a lot of people realize the connection with Atlético Madrid and stuff like that. I think that kind of goes under the radar a little bit, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
talk to me about your time at Atlético Ottawa.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, results haven't gone our way this season. So I think that's evident. But regardless of that, because that can be, football's a strange game where it can change within a matter of days or even hours. So putting that aside, I think the season was ultimately a good one for the entire city, for the entire club. Being partnered with Atletico is something very special, and something that, you never really could either think would kind of be a part of a Canadian soccer club. We're talking one of the powerhouses of European football, world football in that matter. So to kind of be, their little brother, or their, one of their affiliates is something incredible. I mean, our preseason was just something to marvel at, because seeing the first team facilities, seeing where they're training, we're living essentially their life. Our first 2 weeks was in their hotel where they spend the first 2 weeks of preseason. We open up Instagram on their Atlético Madrid account, and they're where we were. So it's pretty something. It's pretty cool to be a part of something like this. And I think the fans have kind of grasped the whole affiliation, and us welcoming us to this city with open arms, because the support was unwavering from game to game. It was something really, really special to be a part of, and I know it's only going to keep growing, because it's only been really the first year of them being actually found, like, having foundation in the city. So it's awesome.
Yeah, it is, and it's that continued growth that we want to see, and
Yeah.
we've touched on it with the national teams. We've touched on it even with it, with the Canadian Premier League. We've touched on it in the MLS as well. That continued growth of football just here in North America, it's incredible.
Mhm.
But to cut what I mean, I want to talk about what brings that growth, and what brings that growth, in my opinion, is the players. Not only the players, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and I don't want to discredit anybody by saying it's just the players, but
Yep.
certainly the players. And when you see a player who can perform at an elite level, or a quality player, it draws eyes to the product. And for you as a footballer, what are the keys to elite performance, or what are the keys to high performance?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because there's so many different keys to what can be help you be elite. I think for myself, just over my experience, over my career, I think taking care of your body should be like kind of like the blanket statement, and then kind of branch off what that entails. So I think the biggest thing for me is, I've already said it, nutrition and hydration, I think, are two very, very important things. And prehab activation, as long as you find pre kind of warm up, pre training, if you have your little routine that lets you let your body be ready for the kind of blow it's going to take on the field. I think that's super important, because that's your foundation. Your body is your foundation. Without that being ready and able, then it's nearly impossible to do all the technical side. And then, so once that's kind of that foundation is kind of built, and you have that steady, you move into more of the technical aspect and the tactical aspect that's more fine tuned. So I think, in terms of that stuff, it's all about kind of dedication. And I know that's almost another cliche, and like dedication, but it really is the repetition and dedication that you apply to yourself, whether it be in training with a team, or one-on-one training, or whatever it may be. If you have that dedication and sort of thrive to make sure you're trying to be your best every day, I think that can pay huge dividends in the long run, because I'm sure that no matter what people say, whether it's God-given speed or God-given power shot, maybe you have those certain attributes, but if you don't continue to be dedicated and exploring the new and how to be better, then you're never going to really reach that elite level. And that's something that not many people do. And otherwise, if it was really easy, then we'd all be playing for Barcelona or Manchester City. But having that kind of mentality, I think, is such a huge part of this game. And if you can have that mentality and then continue to have success on the field, then I think it's you're gonna see a career for yourself kind of explode.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with everything you've said there. And you've said about six different things that I kind of want to segue into.
Yeah,
You've given me that
yeah,
much in your
rambling,
answer.
yeah.
You've given me that much in your answer. I'm not quite
Yeah,
sure which way to go here at the segue, but
yeah, yeah,
there's so
ramble
much.
with that.
No, but there's so much quality in that. It wasn't so much the ramble, because I don't
Yeah.
think it was a ramble. There was so much depth and quality to that, in terms of your, like you said, your nutrition, your the quality, your hydration, the quality of the
Mhm.
food that you're eating, making sure everything is in order, almost, doing the basics, and doing the basics consistently and well, and being dedicated in that aspect. And as
Yep.
a result, then you can demand more from your body. And I
Absolutely.
think the more football has evolved, especially this last 10 years or so, the more that is actually demanded of every player on the pitch. Centre backs need to be able to play, passes like center midfielders. Goalkeepers need to be able
Absolutely.
to play out from the back. Center midfielders need to be able to go box to box and play make and hit set pieces. Wingers need to be able to attack and defend and to track runners. There's so much more demanded of players these days.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the top players in each position, right? I mean, subjectively, you look at Virgil van Dijk, yes, he's a strong, big, kind of classic center back, but then he's playing passes like, Paul Scholes at times.
Yeah.
You're like, this is unbelievable. He's picking balls, he's playing in between the lines. You look at Ederson, big, yes, structure, foundation is big, kind of goalkeeper. He's an unbelievable passer. His feet are incredible. So I think having kind of multiple assets and multiple kind of variations to your game is very, 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 if not the most important thing in modern football. Because if you're just a kind of a one trick pony, it's not kind of the game's going to bypass you very, very quickly. And not to say that anyone in the past was a one trick pony, but it's just the evolution of the game is so is in that sense where you have to be able to do, no matter what position, multiple things well at that position, which like you have to make sure you're building on each day, and you've absolutely hit the nail on the head with those things.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Like you think back to a centre back when I started watching football in the 90s, as long as they could tackle head and clear the ball away, it was like, but there's my centre back. But now if a centre back does
Yeah,
that, the
yeah,
manager's kind of screaming at them, "Why are you giving the
yeah,
ball
yeah, yeah.
away?" It's
Exactly.
it's just funny how the game has changed and how quickly it's changed, really, as well.
Absolutely.
One of the words you used was the dedication. That obviously comes from your discipline.
Mhm.
How do you maintain your discipline? Do you have things in motion that you do every day, certain times, or what is it for you that makes the key difference to stay dedicated, so to speak?
It's funny because I think the biggest thing for me was injuries have happened where I've kind of gone astray at times, and it still happens where it's like whether the timing for training or is kind of a crunch time because you're having meetings, whatever it may be. If I don't do my proper routine of getting my body ready to go on the field, I already start feeling like either my hip flex or my groin and stuff like that. I already kind of feel like getting a little bit more sore than it would be on a normal routine day. So for myself, it's kind of just the kick in the ass of, hey, if you don't do this, your body's not going to be ready to take the training load. So for me, the dedication becomes, hey, this is your career, this is what you want to do, this is what you love. So if you're not consistent in keeping your body fit muscularly, whatever it may be, then you're not going to be able to perform and do what you love, and essentially have a career. So I think that's the biggest thing. And by no means I've dealt with injuries this season, more than ever, but injuries happen, and that's kind of a part of it. But you still can't go astray from the things that you do on a daily basis, because then you're just kind of kicking yourself in the ass, I might say.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you mentioned, what is your hydration? And you
Mhm.
mentioned, your diet as well. And something that's maybe unique to you is you're totally plant-based.
Mhm.
Was that a decision you made later on in life after some research? Did you find it was better for injury prevention, or what made you go down that route?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was any one particular thing. Me personally, I've had kind of digestive issues for a long, long time. I've dealt with kind of stomach issues, so I wanted to try something new. I wanted to see if that would help me, and you know what, it did, and I feel kind of really good doing it. So it's only been about 2 years now in that plant-based diet, and I feel really good. And for me, whenever people ask me about my diet, I say, listen, do your own research, do whatever it may be. I will never force anyone or kind of push my values onto someone else, especially in the world of professional sports, because I would say try things. Sorry, excuse me. Try things, and if it feels right, if it feels good for you, then stick with it, because you and I are different, and then my teammate and I are different. So it doesn't matter. I can think this is the best thing in the world, but it may not work for you. So, but if you try it and it does stick, well, then great. Then you kind of found something that helps you feel better on the field. That helps you feel better on the day to day. And for me, it was kind of just obviously stemmed from the digestive issues, and then obviously I feel lighter. I feel fit, and when I'm in matches, it feels I feel a difference. I definitely feel a difference.
I think that's the key component, isn't it? You're feeling the difference and you're feeling it
Yeah.
in a beneficial way.
Mhm.
So, like you said, if it works for you, do it and you keep doing it. One of the other questions we like to ask, all the professional athletes is, do you take any supplements at all, like whey proteins, BCAAs, and when would you take those after
Yeah,
training, after matches?
I do. Yeah, I do. I take my protein powders. Um, Being plant based, that's really important to make sure you're getting enough protein in your diet. I do take a vegan protein powder. I do take kind of my I'm trying to think of what else it's called. It's I have them up there. I do take BCAAs. I do that for sure. But there's another one I take. Oh, I do the pre-activation stuff, the pre-workout.
Yeah.
I'll do that. It's also a vegan one as well. And I won't do that every day. Sometimes I'll supplement like coffee instead. But I do take a pre-workout, and those are kind of my three main things that I'll be taking. The BCAAs I will do before a workout as well. So the pre-workout and the BCAAs will be before, and then the protein shake will be after.
Mhm. And like you said, it's important to know your own body and to know, your own way of doing things. And when you find out what works, you do it. And it's good for
Absolutely.
you if you've found out certain ways, to do that. And you talked about pre-activation, earlier on in one of your responses. What would you do? Is the pre-activation very much like pre-training? Is it pre-game, or what is it that you do that's sort of a bit different for you?
Yeah. So it's every day. So whether it be game day training session, it'll my pre-activation will be every day. I'll try to time it anywhere between 20 and 25 minutes before we're actually on the field, because it takes me about 15 to 20 minutes to actually complete it. And it entails kind of a whole regimen of starting off with foam rolling, warming up my muscles to kind of wake them up from the night. And then I'll start doing an opening of my hips, kind of 10 each direction forwards on a 45-degree angle, and then kind of a 90-degree angle. I'll do about 10 each side. And then I'll go into more of dynamic movements, opening up my hips, activating my glutes with bands, and then activating my groins, doing kind of certain exercises, squeezing the ball. And then as soon as that's done, I'll do a couple more right before I go on the field, a couple more band walks to kind of get the glutes firing so I can be kind of activated in that area. And then I go straight into warm up. So it's usually to about 15 to 20 minutes to complete. And I'll try to aim it anywhere between, 20, 25-minute mark before each training. And that's every day.
And is that based on really injury prevention or
Yes.
yeah.
So it started off. I've had kind of hip strains in the past and groin strains in the past. So that's why I mainly focus on my hips and my groins. I also do wear core shorts. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but
Yeah.
they're very kind of compressed tights, and they kind of go in an X pattern to hold myself together. But yeah, it was basically an injury prevention. Ever since then, I've tried to find ways to limit those, and ever since I've kind of stuck with this one program I've been doing, knock on wood, I've been pretty solid in that area.
That's great to hear. And the reason why I ask these questions is we do have a lot of young listeners, people who want to
Absolutely.
go pro, or
Yep.
maybe people who are, maybe in an academy and trying to set themselves apart. And we're hopefully trying to provide some valuable information that they can take and say, okay, this is various ways that works for different athletes. And I think the key component with that is everyone who seems to be wanting to push on is driven, but they're always doing something extra, whether that
Yeah.
be that little warm up before warm up, whether it be the stretching, whether it be a little bit of extra gym work. Have you found that has impacted your performance, that extra individual focus?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, in a lot of ways, not only preparing your body, but it also kind of gives you that sense of structure, that sense of this is my time. I'm going to do this, and kind of nothing is going to come in my way because, this is something that I need. So I think it's heavily impacted my performance, not only, on a physical standpoint, me being ready, but absolutely on a mental standpoint, because it gives you that kind of refresh, and just, being able to surround yourself in just the things that you have to do instead of all distractions that may come, whether it be match day or training session, doesn't matter. It gives you that sense of, this is for me and this is what I got to do in order to perform my best.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because everyone has a different way of preparing, whether it be
Mhm.
for training or for a match day. And speaking of training, because there's everyone takes, especially the elite level, takes a professional approach to training. I know obviously when you go into training every day, you're there to work hard, you're there to improve, you're there to give it 100%. But you're obviously training with your friends, you're training with people you have a bit of fun with all at the same time. Talk to me about the importance of the professional approach to training and how seriously do you take that every single day?
To put it simply, training is my job, and that's what, young players who want to be professional, that's how they have to think of it. Whether it be a more of a traditional job that their parents or friends may have who not necessarily play professional sports, it's the same thing for you. It's the same thing for that player going into the training ground every day, is that's their job, that's their office. So if you're not taking it professionally, if you're not, having the right attitude mentally or whatever it may be, maybe it's not the right environment for you. So that's kind of the way I approach it every single day, ever since I was, 15, wanting to really make a push to become a professional. And that's the way you have to be in order to actually, take that leap into professional football. You just have to make sure that every single day you're going into the training ground, that it's a day at the office, and bad days happen, and that's okay, but it's a day at the office no matter what, and that's how you have to approach it.
It's an interesting point you've made, and you mentioned when you were 15 years old, you really had that mindset. And you began to start, thinking that way at 15.
Mhm.
You mentioned Jermaine Defoe, at Toronto, and how he done really well for Toronto, but he did obviously struggle, of course, with the traveling and stuff. I'm sure it was
Yeah.
mind blowing for him. Take me back to when you were 15, 16, 17, and growing up, and the dream and the aspiration to play professional, and not only just play professional, to represent your country, which you did several times. And I think that's an incredible achievement, to represent your country on at a professional level. Tell me about maybe the best piece of coaching advice that you've ever received in your life, especially when you're at that age and that you're developing, but you're also getting ready for that first team and to play really against men.
Yeah, I say 15 because that was when I first originally joined TFC Academy, and then as soon as you entered that kind of environment, you realize, oh wow, like this is real, especially being from there, and it's like we didn't have anything, but it's like this is real, and this is possible. When you ask me about a piece of advice, it's hard to pinpoint one specific thing because I think I've taken a piece from all the coaches I've had and kind of made a mold of all the good things that they've said. I think Greg Vanny at the time was a very meticulous tactical technician. He was actually very very in tune with all of the aspects of game, whether it be from our sports science to on the field and tactical. He once told me about playing the game as time. He kind of used the analogy of using the game as time, and the whole game was time. And I think that's the one thing I can honestly think of, and it may not necessarily be an individual thing, but it was more of kind of a team thing. And I keep resorting back to that for a few people who have asked me, and it's just like, if I can pass you the ball within 1 second and the defender can get there in 2.5 seconds, we're now in a positive 1 second, 1.5 second advantage. And I think that we kind of broke down that thing, and I think that's the one thing tactically, or one thing that I can just pull from my memories in terms of actually thinking about what a coach told me. But I've had all my coaches on the other side kind of just tell me, if you're not going to be dedicated, similar things. So I was like, you're not going to be dedicated, you're not going to be ready, then you're going to absolutely get folded kind of come the professional game. So they've all told me in multiple different ways, you have to be ready in multiple different ways to play in the program.
It's phenomenal how just like one little, example or
Yeah.
one little analogy can just stick with you, for your whole career, and you're able to pass that on. I heard an interview with Kyle Walker when he first joined Man City, and when I think he got the ball passed to him in training, and he took it on his right foot, and Pep stopped the training session, blew the whistle, and said, when that ball came to you, you're at right back. So you lose point not one of a millisecond by letting it go to your right foot. If you take that on your left foot, you've like you're like point not one
Yeah.
second up, and you're just sort of going, that's insane, just like the
Yeah.
meticulous details, but certainly details which inevitably make the difference in a match day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a very similar kind of thing that I was just touching on. It's strange. It's really strange, but it's cool. It's cool to think back.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And something you've touched on several times, we haven't really come to the topic yet, but we're going to right now, and it's one of my favorite topics. The match fit mindset is what I like to call it. You've touched on discipline and dedication and stuff, but how important is having that strong mindset and being focused and being determined? We mentioned earlier it's probably one of the most important things if you get that right before going out and playing. But how important is it to be strong mentally and focused, determined, disciplined, all of that stuff that features into a footballer's life?
Yeah, that's it's such a huge portion of this game. And I would say, 50% of this game is meant to go straight down the middle with like the technical tactical side, and then the other 50% is mental. The game is not easy in any aspect, whether professional or not. Whether you're in the team, you're out of the team, you're injured, you're healthy. It's a roller coaster of emotions. So I think being able to be mentally strong is huge for a footballer of any nature. When it comes to obviously the dedication aspect, it also plays into the mindset, because you always have to be thinking, whether you're a professional, how can I be better, or whether you're a young footballer aspiring to be a professional, how can I be a professional? So having that mindset is super super important, and being mentally strong. And I've had to miss birthday parties, I've had to miss proms, I've had to miss a bunch of things that in my life, because this is what I wanted to do. And having that kind of mentality and kind of tunnel vision at times is super important. Not to say that you can't enjoy your life and also be a professional footballer, but you just have to make sure that you're mentally strong enough to understand that if this is what you really want, then that's got to be the most important thing for however long it may be.
It is, isn't it? It really is the most important thing. And something that I think is a challenge for for a lot of young footballers is the fine line between winning and developing. Because sometimes you could win a game of football and maybe as a team or as an individual you've been horrible, but you've got the win and you're like happy days, 3 points, move on. But at the same time, you can also go out there and have an unbelievable performance and lose. And it's trying to find that balance. And for a young player and for yourself, whatever you were coming up through, how did you find that balance, or was there a finding of that balance, or is it very subconscious?
Yeah, it's not easy. It's a tough one to kind of maneuver within that system because for myself, we were 15, 16 playing in what was the Canadian Soccer League at the time, which were against fully grown men. So it was more often than not we were getting hammered. We were bottom of the table and whatever it may be. But um, it's finding kind of that balance isn't easy, and I'm trying to just think because I remember more, like I said, more often now we're losing, but it's like all right, I'm just going through games and just getting absolutely peppered with goals and just had coming into the locker room being like, damn it, like that's not what we wanted. But then our manager kind of corralling us, being like, listen, you're playing against men. This is where your time to shine is. This is where, if you want to be a professional, how can you handle this guy who may be 25, 26, 27, whatever it was, and you're 15, 16, where you're physically not even close on their level. But it's like, can you find ways, can you be quicker on the ball than them? Can you do this? So it's, for me personally, I think it was definitely a difficult time, but it was an enjoyable time because I saw myself growing from year to year to year in multiple aspects, and then kind of making that leap. It was something special, and I think if I had to either step into a coaching role now and be coaching that kind of age group, I would definitely be more on the side of what my coaches were on the development side. I'd be like, listen, yes, okay, if we go out and win, no problem, but it's more about how we play, and it's more about how you can play as an individual to help yourself and help the team. Because at the end of the day, if you lose to a team of grown men, then it doesn't necessarily matter because you're focusing on much more than that. You're focusing on your potential next 10 to 15, 20 years of a career. So I think that's the mindset I would have as well.
It certainly is that, isn't it? It's the career focus, the mindset of having that long-term successful professional career, and it's constantly looking to develop and to learn, while being able to develop into the player that you want to be or that you can be, if I can word it that way,
Yeah.
for the next portion of your career. And obviously, you mentioned you've took some hammerings, when you were young playing against the men and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, talk to me about confidence. Confidence for a footballer seems to be everything. You've seen some of the best strikers in the world go through maybe a goal drought, and all of a sudden it looks like they can't hit a barn door. But once they get one, next thing they're scoring every week. How important, not only because ability is there. If you're a professional footballer, you have ability. It really comes down to how consistent can you be with that ability. Can you be Wilfred Zaha and maybe play really well every other week, or can you be Mohamed Salah and play really well every week?
Yeah.
Talk to me about confidence and consistency as a footballer.
Yeah, confidence is huge. It's like I said, it's within that 50% of the mental game that I kind of mentioned. It's not easy to constantly or always be confident because, like I said, you can hit a wall sometimes, and comments or whatever may affect you in different ways. So I think having the ability to be confident at all times, even when things are not going your way, is something that an elite performer is able to do on a consistent basis. I think having that mentality is super super important, and not everyone can. Not everyone can have that mentality because if you look at the top performers over however many years, you have Messi and Ronaldo. They've gone through times where the fans are whistling at them or they're losing 5-6 nil, and they're not scoring goals for however 2-3 games, whatever it may be. But then for them to be internally being like, okay, I'm still this person, I have to be confident in my ability, and they are, and they can clearly see it, and then they step out and they score a hat trick and they do this, and that's them internalizing, I'm still this person, I have the ability, I know this and that. things may not be going my way. People may be saying certain comments about me, whether it be, from a youth footballer's perspective, a lot of times it's parents, a lot of times it's, sometimes youth coaches, whatever it may be. And then into the professional game, fans, media, whoever it is on that side, kind of blocking that out, understanding who you are within yourself and being able to perform at a level you can. And that's all that really matters. And then, consistency is another big same part of that, is just having that ability to produce performances week in, week out, and knowing that you're capable of doing it. I think if you know you're capable of doing those things, then there's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. If you're capable of doing it, there's nothing stopping you. It's all about the right mindset, the right, nutrition, hydration. It kind of all filters in and around that whole thing, doesn't it? It just that encompasses really everything in terms of being a professional footballer, on top of, having the ability, of course. In terms of motivation as well, if you have everything nailed on, right? So if your nutrition's great, your hydration's great, you're feeling good, you're confident, you're playing football, what motivates you to keep turning up every day and wanting to improve? Because I'm assuming, and again, I'm not a professional player, so it's very easy for me to assume, but I'm assuming, sometimes everything could be going well and you just kind of turn up the training and you go, but what is it that motivates you to push forward every day?
Yeah, and that's a good question, because there are different stages of your career, and I would say from the moment you sign your first professional contract, there are different stages of what may motivate you. If you're an older, experienced footballer, maybe motivating you is having your family by your side and playing for them for as long as you can, whether it be financially, whatever it may be. I think that's a motivation for players to tail end of the career. And then
Yeah.
a youth footballer, that maybe their motivation is aspirations to be playing at a higher level or a different club or whatever it may be in a different league. So I think it all depends on kind of the stage of your career. But as a generalization, I think if you're not motivated to win games, and if you're not motivated to propel your team into a position of, success, then I think you shouldn't necessarily be playing. I think that's got to be, I think, a generalization of what a motivated footballer should look like, is have those things that motivate them at a team level or personal level to play your best. And then obviously everyone is playing for different reasons and have motivations of their own within their own personal lives. But I think if I can just broadly center like a generalization of what should motivate a football, I think it should be a team winning, a team success, and making yourself better. If you don't have those motivations, then I think you're not in the right business.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. And I think, as you said, if those motivations, the team winning, the team being successful, and it brings me to something I read today, and an article I was reading about coaching, just coaching in general today. The guy was writing and he sort of said he believes that every footballer who's on the pitch has a responsibility to his fellow teammate, or her fellow teammate, that you have a responsibility, one, to give 100%. You have a responsibility, two, to help them. You have a responsibility to leave nothing on the field. And I just thought that was a really interesting point. And for you as a player, do you ever feel, okay, I have a responsibility to help my teammate out? And talk to me about like having a feeling of responsibility. Of course, you're focused on your own game, but is there a feeling of responsibility, or because of you're part of a team, you're all in it together?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's such a huge part, because at the end of the day, it's not an individual sport. It's not tennis, it's not golf, it's football. It's 11 guys on the field all fighting for the same goal, and then actually not even 11. It's 18 on the bench, and then it's end up being a 25 on the squad. That's a 26 on the squad, whatever it may be, fighting for the same goal. So absolutely, especially myself, being one of the older players on the team, specifically in this year, I think that there's a huge responsibility on everyone part of the team to help one another, because kind of tail ending on my last point is everyone is playing for their own reasons. And if I give a bad pass away within my own 18-yard box, and my keeper is left hung out, I've put my whole team, and I've put him in a position where it's difficult for him to succeed. And now I've ruined that, and I've ruined this. So there's a huge responsibility within everyone, especially playing, that you have to help one another, because you can't beat a team 1 versus 11. You have to play as a unit, and everybody has a responsibility to take care of their own business and help one another, because if you didn't, then you'd have major problems, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that team ethic, it can take a team so far. It's incredible just what that team ethic and that team atmosphere and togetherness, for want of a better word, can
Yeah, and
do.
with that being said, sorry, coach, it's not easy to have that, right?
Mhm.
Because everyone has that kind of selfish mentality at times. Like, I want to be doing this, and if I dribble here and score here, then I'm going to get in the paper, or I'm going to be
Mhm.
on Twitter or whatever, Instagram. And it's like, so I'm sure that happens. That's happened to myself in the past. It's happened to everyone. So it's like finding ways to balance that, right?
Mhm.
Because there has to be times where you have to be an individual and go shine, and then that's fine. But it's like you still have to have like the foundation of, we are a team. This is a team sport, and you have to help one another lift. And then if that's your main goal, then I'm sure individual performances, individual abilities will start to shine and spread light on their own when they're ready. And that's the way it is.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I think once the team has that togetherness and that ethic, like you said, if that's the foundation, it really gives, those creative players who probably take most of the plaudits, which is a little unfair sometimes, in my opinion, because
I
they're the
agree, being a
ones,
defensive midfielder.
they're the ones scored all the goals, but
Yeah.
every team wants N'Golo Kante, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you look at it in that context, it gives the creative players the freedom to go and play, go and score, go and put the name up in lights. But if it wasn't for the defense saying we're not conceding today, if it wasn't for the holding midfielder, shout out to you saying that number 10 isn't dictating the game today. I'm not giving him a sniff. He's not getting a yard today. If it
Yeah,
isn't for that mentality, those creative players probably don't have the ability to go and win a game because the game could
exactly.
be lost at the other end of the pitch.
Exactly. It's such a pendulum where one thing affects another, and um yeah, that's it. You said it rightly so, and I'll let you say it, right? Because they take all the credit, but we just sit back. So I didn't say it, you did. I just agreed.
Oh yeah, yeah. You just that's a politician's answer. You just keep
Yeah.
keep it right, keep it right. What about the goals for yourself? Like you mentioned, you're one of the older guys in your team at this current season. For the next sort of 6, 7, 8 years of your career, 10 years if you want to keep going, what's your goals? Where do you see yourself going? What legacy maybe do you want to leave behind whenever you do decide to hang up the boots?
Yeah, I think that's another good question as well. It's I want to, first and foremost, I want to play as long as I can. This is the only thing I love, is the only thing I can see myself doing for as long as it can be. So for me, it's kind of just leaving an impression on any player I play with. I think would be a big thing, whether it be from a food and nutrition standpoint, whether it be from a work ethic standpoint, a mentality standpoint. Whatever it is, I think my goal is to just leave an impression on my teammates, whatever club that might be at, and leave them with things to build on for themselves. And then for me, playing at the highest level is still aspirations for me, whether that be MLS or USL, CPL, whatever it is. I still have those motivations. I still push myself in order to be there. And because I feel like if I didn't have those kind of those thoughts still, then maybe it's already time to hang up the boots.
Mhm.
But yeah, for me, it's just leaving. I think most importantly, myself happy at the end of the show where I hang up my boots, and I want to be happy with the things that I achieve.
Yeah, I think that's so vitally important, isn't it? To say, what, I give everything there, and I'm
Mm,
proud of my career. And
mm,
I think one of the key components of your career, one of the things that I thought was brilliant, was the fact that you've represented Canada. You've played for Canada at a national team level. You've several caps to your name, and for a young player listening to this, who obviously the pinnacle of all football, people might argue it's a Champions League or the World Cup, but I think wearing your national team's jersey and being selected as one of the best players for your country that the coaching staff see as someone who can take your country forward or win a game of football has to be one of the most proud moments a player has in his entire career, no matter what they do.
absolutely, yeah. I remember where I was, and when when how old I was exactly in the moment I got the first call from the manager at the national team. So yeah, it was definitely a special moment for me. Like you said, we all want to win a World Cup. We all want to win a Champions League. And then I didn't realize how special it was to actually be called up to the national team, and put on that jersey for the full team. And it's a moment that I'll treasure forever. Especially seeing the success of the national team now. It's something that I'm happy to kind of be a part of in the development of. And then not only that, like I was playing with top professionals and top ballers at the time, and
Mhm.
and having those experiences will last with me forever. So I was really happy and really proud to put on that jersey, and I still have it up and hanging in my house. So it'll be one to treasure for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. One to frame, one to tell the kids and the grandkids about,
Absolutely.
way down the line. And I think one of the things you said there, you got to play with some top ballers, whenever you were at Canada, and you mentioned Jermaine Defoe earlier. Has there been any sort of veterans or players who have retired now that were maybe instrumental in your career? Maybe not even with you as in verbally helping you or physically helping you, just even in how they conducted themselves and the professionalism. Is there anyone that comes to mind or sticks out?
Yeah, I mean, one in particular, the first thing that comes to mind is Michael Bradley. Being a defensive midfielder, it was the perfect storm that he was coming into the team when I was coming up as well. And then seeing him firsthand, he was another cliche, but was literally the first one at training and the last one to leave. And he was always taking care of himself tremendously. He was in the gym doing extra work. He was doing all of his prehab. He was making sure he was fit in terms of, nutrition and hydration, like all the stuff that we kind of we touched on. Is he was doing it to a T, and he played a huge part on my career, just even visually, just watching him on the day to day. And then also he helped mentor me for a little while as well. He would pull me aside after training sessions and make me do fitness with him. And if he was going to do it, then of course, then I could as well. So he would always kind of do these little things and, pull me into drills after training, whether or not be like for us, touch and finish or touch and pass into mini goals. So he was kind of one I can say who was definitely instrumental to my mindset and the way I do things now, because he's a top professional and still playing at one of the highest levels in the world, and doing things that he did things that I could only wish for my career. So he was definitely one of the first things that come to mind, and the one that I can solely pinpoint that definitely left a huge impression on me.
Yeah, Michael Bradley, phenomenal player. Maybe had a bit of a head start getting, with Bob, the dad, being able to give him all the tips and tricks of
Yeah,
how to
yeah,
help himself and
exactly,
how to conduct himself and how to be a professional. But take nothing
exactly.
away from Michael Bradley. Look at the age he's at. We've talked about the physical demands that it is in not only the Canadian Premier League but in the MLS as well. He's
Yeah,
keeping his body's ticking over. He's what, mid 30s now. He's
yeah,
still every week playing for Toronto.
yeah. Week in, week out. Yeah,
He's lifted the highest prize and MLS has to offer. He's captain
yep,
his country at a World Cup. Phenomenal career for Michael Bradley,
absolutely.
and long may it continue as well. I think it's really interesting. You mentioned that he was maybe so instrumental for you. If you could give a piece of advice as we begin to wrap up our podcast today, Chris, but if you could give a piece of advice to one young footballer who is either on the verge of going pro or who has just gone pro or who wants to make it pro and is listening to this, what piece of advice would you give that person?
I think I would just say be super open minded into learning new concepts within the entire aspect of playing football. You might think a lot of the things that might entail to what entails to be a professional. Just be open to learning new things and have a great mindset of constantly being positive, no matter the roller coaster of emotions you might be facing. I think if you can kind of do those simple things and always have a somewhat positive outlook, even though you're going to go through negative times, and be open to learning new things. I think there's a world ahead of you and things that you're going to accomplish and things that you're going to learn from a multitude of different people. So I think if you're willing to have kind of that mindset going into the professional game, you're going to have a successful career, and not only a successful career, an unbelievably successful career. So I think that's super important, because the talent is I'm sure there on each individual, and it's just that mindset and mentality of being a true professional is what separates you from the rest.
There you have it, folks. Words of wisdom, absolute words of wisdom here from Chris about how you can enhance, your game, how you can achieve optimal performance, how you can push on and get better and improve and increase your mindset. I do have to say a thank you to the folks at Atlético Ottowa for arranging this, for getting Chris, and we went through all the motions to get you here, and I want to thank them for being able to do that for me. Chris, thank you for your time. And just before we go anywhere, if any of the guys do want to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
Yeah, my Instagram is C_Mannella and my Twitter is C10Mannella. I'm on those. Not the most active on Twitter, but I'll give you here and there maybe a good laugh. But yeah, you can find me there.
There you have it, folks. Give him a follow, see what he's up to, follow his journey. Chris, this has been phenomenal. This has been the Matchfit Football Podcast. Like we said, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram at Matchfit Football for all your Matchfit needs. This has been Chris Mannella. Chris, thank you for coming on the show today. It's been brilliant.
Thank you so much. A pleasure.